Joining us now to talk about this great tax cut plan, House of Delegates member from Virginia Beach. He ran for Lieutenant Governor, Glenn Davis. Glenn, great to have you.
John, great to have you on. I appreciate the opportunity. And I guess it's kind of tough to be a radio host and be losing your voice. That's kind of an ironic situation to be in.
It's not the best situation. And if I didn't have you on, I would have probably gone home now and put on a best of. But I do want to get your take on this tax plan.
Sure. Well, I appreciate it. You know, John, I'm excited. You started in the intro talking about, just how important this is. And, I think we've been talking about tax reform since I've been alive, John, as a party. And it's about time we actually get something done. To really put something together and get it through both houses, I think, is amazing. Obviously, they're not in sync yet with each other, and in some aspects, kind of a good thing, because I think some of what has to happen in conference, it requires a little bit more sitting at the table. But it's great for, the majority of both houses to recognize how important this is. And I understand the Republicans have the majority of both houses, but, we've been in situations before where we couldn't get, even our party around the fact that it's time to do something. So for them to come forward and realize that it's time for the relief for individuals, it's time for relief for small businesses, and it's time for relief for companies as well. Mm-hmm. I was not really thrilled with some of the analysis by Politico. I understand its comments made by, the Washington electeds, as far as they want to help small businesses. Some of them said only because they feel they had to, because their main goal was to lower the corporate income tax rate down to 20%. But what a lot of them don't get is the majority of the impact that we're going to have, the majority of the benefit out of this is going to come from changing the tax rate on pass-through income for small businesses, those S-corps, those LLCs, basically the group of companies that create 70% of all jobs across our country.
So it appears they're going to do something for the sub-S corporations, but obviously, Glenn, you looked at this in depth. Mm-hmm. And when you ran for lieutenant governor, obviously expanding business opportunities was one of your platforms. What type of a difference in the economy do you think this tax cut will make?
John, if they get the pass-through issue right, and right now it still needs to be tweaked a little bit more, but I'm thrilled because we don't get anything unless it gets through both houses to this point. But if they get it right, the growth of our economy from this could be tremendous. And here's where the media gets it wrong, John. The media throws out there, if the companies say that if you decrease taxes, it's not going to make companies grow. It's not going to make them hire people. And here's what the media doesn't understand. You have to separate the big C corporations from the small companies, like Walmart, Starbucks, for example. Starbucks doesn't need more money to open another location. Neither does Walmart. They're not hurting for money to hire those employees for a new location. They're cash heavy. They can do it. They don't go to the bank with their personal balance sheet trying to get a loan when they want to expand. Small businesses do. So while a tax cut for big companies, and many times a good chunk of that money goes to shareholder value, which, we can argue all day is a good thing for U.S. companies, and it makes us more competitive on the international market. When you cut the taxes for small companies, those pass-through companies, that money goes into hiring that new employee, growing that new location and creating growth in those companies. So hopefully one day those companies become the next Walmart or Starbucks. So I'm hoping that in conference they concentrate more on this business pass-through for small businesses, the LLCs, the S-corps, because that is where the most opportunity lies when it comes to economic growth for our country.
Okay, we're chatting with Glenn Davis, House of Delegates member, Republican in Virginia Beach. In Virginia, he also ran for lieutenant governor in 2017 for the Republican nomination. For that, the eventual winner, Jill Vogel. Glenn, explain in layman's terms for our listeners what you mean by the sub-S and LLC corporation pass-through. what exactly does this mean? How does it work?
Sure. So, John, if you're a regular big company, think of Walmarts and Starbucks of the world. You're what they call a C corporation. In other words, when you have income at the end of the year, you pay an income tax, corporate income tax, and that's what the federal government is trying to get down to 20%. If you're a small business, so you started, a gas station, a telecom company like myself, a restaurant, you're a limited liability company, you're a limited liability company with an S corporation, basically a small business. And for those businesses, at the end of the year, any profit you have, or not any profit, but basically all the income from that business gets transferred to your personal income return, and then you pay your regular income tax rate on that. So let's say that you were an individual in the 33% tax bracket. You would pay 33% tax on any income generated by your business, not the corporate income tax. And so that's what's important because, whether that money gets reinvested in the business or not, Uncle Sam's taking a tax in many cases what could be much higher than they do on corporations. And that would create a competitive disadvantage for American small businesses against huge, international companies. And that's what we have to be careful of. Additionally, John, I'm excited that we're getting something done, and I think the heavy lift inside the conference committee is about to start. But it concerns me just a tad that the only thing the House and the Senate have agreed upon that is not going to phase out right now is the corporate tax cut. Because, like I said, the small business tax cut is just as important and probably more so than bringing our corporate tax cut down to 20%. I think even the president, when he was outlining some of the things that he thought was important and where he thought certain rates should be, he recognized that himself. And, and he's a business guy first and foremost, so you would expect that. I just think that the members of the chamber need to recognize this as well as they continue to go forward. So
you want the pass-through income on small businesses to be at 20%, equal to what big corporations are. Is that my understanding?
John, that would be great. And there's one fallacy out there. When we all took economics class back in high school or college, they talk about how corporate income gets double taxed because if, let's say, Walmart makes a profit, they get taxed at what may be the 20% rate. And then if those people that own Walmart stock, get their dividends, and then that gets taxed again at whatever, that tax rate happens to be there. But there's a fallacy there because 3/4 of all dividends paid by U.S. companies never get double taxed. They never get that second tax assessed because 3/4 of all dividends are paid to things like nonprofits, retirement funds, or foreign investors. So the whole idea that companies still have it worse, big companies, because they get double taxed is a fallacy. I would say let's understand who drives this economy, and it's not Walmart. It is American small businesses. I do believe we need to be more competitive on the international stage with our corporate income taxes. I'm happy that we're looking at bringing it down and being competitive. But let's understand, if we're going to drive America's economy, that happens at the small business level, not at the giant level.
So if the pass-through didn't go through, why wouldn't anybody that had a sub-S just change it and go to a C Corp in order to take advantage of the 20% tax?
Well, John, when you do become a C Corp, there's a lot of other stuff that comes into play. And a lot of additional, a lot of small businesses don't like to get, enormous bills and from their accountants. They don't have the money for that. C Corps are not a viable tax structure for a small business. And as you grow, as you have shareholders and you want to go public, it makes sense to transition over to that C Corp and a couple other scenarios as well. But for the overwhelming American small business person, being a C corporation is not a viable and efficient tax structure for them.
Okay, so basically, if in the reconciliation they get to this 20, 25%, whatever the figure is, pass-through on small businesses, sub-S's and LLCs, then Glenn Davis would be happy with that. Is that my understanding?
Oh, John, I'd be over the moon. And don't get me wrong, because I've got an editorial lockdown now. I am thrilled where we're at. The president has pushed, a big tax cut that literally covers everyone from your private individual for the small business to the big business. You know what happens when legislative bodies get a hold of a good idea, and they've gotten a hold of it, but it's still, at a 15,000, 10,000 foot view, still does great things. But now is where the rubber meets the road, and we just have to tweak a few things as it gets through the reconciliation process and conference committee. And so that's where I'm really happy that can be tweaked and kind of fixed, and it'll be good. And I would hope also in doing this, John, that they get rid of the phase outs. One thing that they kind of slapped on there, and I think part of it was, especially in the Senate where they're trying to kind of create some revenue neutrality and that sort of thing. But, they have it where at $150,000, it starts to phase out of married income. But if you've got a spouse that, is very successful in their own right, why should that eat into the benefit of you creating a small business? If you've got multiple small businesses, why shouldn't you have the benefit on all of them as opposed to, one of them or two of them maxing them out? I mean, John, I'm in Austin right now, I'm getting ready to create another business. So I'm in Austin with a business partner of mine. We're taking all the risk, all the upfront cost, to try to put something together. Any benefit that allows us to expand and be competitive, I'd like to, would be great to have. But also, if it's fair, let's keep it long term. Let's not just say it phases out at 150 or it phases out in X number of years. I like to have a Congress that, put together this tax cut structure, and it was something that we didn't have to revisit again in 5 years because it's all going to phase out on us.
Well, yes. I mean, the phase out makes no sense whatsoever. We're with Glenn Davis, House of Delegates member, Republican, Virginia Beach. Glenn, speaking of the House of Delegates, who's going to be the speaker?
Kurt Cox. John, we're going to keep Yancey seat. We're going to keep that slim 51-person majority. We're going to have a great new speaker in Kurt Cox, and then we're going to move forward with a very aggressive agenda to try to continue pushing Virginians forward. It's going to be great to see at the federal level for them to actually get something done now to help make Americans' lives better. And if we can piggyback on top of that here in Virginia and do our part, I think we've got a great opportunity for Virginians to truly flourish all through 2018 and beyond.
What makes you so confident you're going to win the David Yancey recount?
A little bit of faith, no, but John, I mean, we're up 10. When you look at the recounts in the past, I think it was Bob McDonald's close AG election where they had maybe 800 around the state, and then that were impacted. And you take that and you narrow it down to a delegate race, and we're talking, if you run the ratios, maybe 8. And even if we, lost all those, Yancey still wins. It's a little bit of speculation, but I know 10 sounds slim. 10, vote margin sounds slim, but this is after they take into account provisionals. It's after they've taken into account absentees. So really, we're just looking for people that mismarked their ballot, and then what ratio of those would we win or lose? So I think hopefully we're sitting in a good position. And we're welcoming in Speaker Cox here in about a month or so.
Glenn Davis, when did they start the recount?
I read on now, John. I think it's the beginning of December. We had some family issues, so I've been out of touch the last few days. But I think it's this week is something that's coming into play.
All right, it's going to be interesting. Glenn Davis, we'll keep our eye on it. If David Yancey hangs on to that seat, Kurt Cox will indeed be the speaker. Republicans will be in control. If not, it's a 50-50 tie, and there'll be a power-sharing agreement. But likely, under that scenario, incoming Governor Ralph Northam would likely give a job to a Republican House of Delegates member in this administration, which would impact their pension. So they're likely to take the job, which would then give Toscano and the Democrats control over the committees prior to the special. So there's still a lot of things in play. Glenn, thanks for being with us.
Oh, well, maybe we if you like, we can talk about that one, maybe next time. It's going to be interesting. I don't think our governor really wants to see the Democrats in control. Power sharing maybe, but their caucus over there it's rather interesting with all the new people coming aboard. There's a big shift. A lot of them are not fond of Toscano, and because you've got a committed Democratic socialist over there, and some other people that have really jumped off the left side of the bandwagon. But we can save that for another time. But John, thank you so much for having me.
So hang on a second. So you're taking the position that Governor-elect Ralph Northam does not want a democratically controlled House.
John, here's my thought on this. In a traditional scenario, and under a normal scenario, it sounds great, but you've got a couple of factions over there in that caucus. I mean, you've got all these new guys that just came aboard that are far left. A lot of them didn't get support by, Toscano and others. They've come in with these ideas that are way out of the mainstream, and they're going to push it. And if there's a power struggle inside of a body that is, almost not quite half, so maybe 35% new, that are out of touch with the rest of that caucus, and the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a power struggle for not just a speaker but now committee chairs. I think you have that internal chaos. So if I'm Ralph Northam sitting there, I'm thinking I probably want a 50-50 power share, because then, there's something that we can garner a little bit. But if he goes and he puts his party in power in the House, I think internal chaos ensues. And I don't know if he really wants to go down that route. Like I said, it sounds really good in theory, but in application, the Democrats haven't ruled in a long time. And to throw it out there with a body with so many new members that are not in touch with the legacy body, it could be very problematic for their caucus.
Okay, we're out of time. I want to thank Glenn Davis for being with us. Great analysis. Glenn, we'll see how it plays out.